The restaurant's warm glow spilled onto the snow-covered sidewalk, a stark contrast to the darkness in James Harrington's eyes. He sat alone at a table meant for 6, surrounded by empty chairs that seemed to mock him. As the wealthiest man in the city, he could buy anything, except what he truly needed tonight. Before we continue this journey together, if you're enjoying this story, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us create more content that touches hearts and reminds us of what truly matters in life. James adjusted his custom-made suit and checked his watch, a $90,000 timepiece that couldn't buy him a single second of genuine companionship. The restaurant had agreed to stay open just for him on Christmas Eve, for a price that would feed a family for months. The staff moved silently around him, their festive smiles fading whenever they thought he wasn't looking. "Another glass, sir?" asked the waiter, already pouring the aged bourbon without waiting for a response. "Thank you, Michael," James said, remembering the young man's name, a habit from his business life that rarely translated to personal connections. At 45, James Harrington had built Harrington Enterprises from nothing into a technology empire valued at billions. Business magazines called him brilliant. Financial analysts called him ruthless. No one called him on Christmas. His phone lay silent beside his plate. No messages from his ex-wife, who had taken their daughter to spend the holidays with her new husband in Europe. No calls from his board members, who feared him more than they respected him. No texts from friends, because James had colleagues and acquaintances, not friends. The restaurant door opened, letting in a gust of winter air and the sound of children's laughter. James looked up, irritated at the interruption. He had paid for privacy. A woman stood in the doorway, holding the hands of 2 identical little girls, perhaps 6 or 7 years old. All 3 were bundled in worn winter coats, their cheeks flushed from the cold. "I'm so sorry," the woman said, noticing James. "The sign said open, but we can go elsewhere." "Ma'am, I apologize," the restaurant manager hurried over. "We're actually closed for a private event." The woman's face fell. "Oh. I promised the girls a special dinner tonight." She knelt down to her daughters. "We'll find somewhere else, okay?" One of the twins looked directly at James, her eyes wide and curious. "Why is that man eating all alone on Christmas?" The innocent question cut through James like a knife. He found himself standing, his voice calling out before he could stop himself. "Wait," he said. "Please, join me." The manager turned, shocked. The woman looked equally surprised. "I have plenty of room," James continued, gesturing to the empty chairs. "And it's Christmas Eve. No one should be searching for a place to eat tonight." The woman hesitated. "We couldn't impose." "Please," James said, and was surprised to hear the desperation in his voice. "I'd appreciate the company." Something in his tone must have convinced her. With a nod, she guided her daughters toward his table. "I'm Sarah," she said as they approached. "These are my daughters, Emma and Lily." "James Harrington," he replied, pulling out chairs for them. "The James Harrington?" Sarah asked, recognition dawning on her face. James nodded, bracing himself for the usual reaction, awe, intimidation, or the calculating look people got when they realized his net worth. Instead, Sarah simply smiled. "Well, thank you for sharing your table, Mr. Harrington. Girls, what do we say?" "Thank you," the twins chorused, climbing into their chairs with identical movements that James found oddly fascinating. As the waiter brought menus, James observed his unexpected dinner companions. Sarah's coat was well worn but clean, her hands showing signs of hard work. The twins were well behaved but bubbling with the excitement only children could feel on Christmas Eve. "Order anything you'd like," James said. "It's my treat." "That's very generous," Sarah replied, "but we can pay for our own meals." James recognized the pride in her voice. It reminded him of himself, decades ago, before success had changed him. "Consider it my Christmas gift," he said. "I haven't had the opportunity to give many this year." Sarah studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Thank you. That's very kind." As they ordered, James learned that Sarah was a nurse at the city hospital, working the night shift to support her daughters after their father had left 3 years ago. Tonight was her rare night off, and she had promised the girls a special Christmas Eve dinner. The cafeteria at the hospital was supposed to be open, she explained, but there was a pipe burst. Hence our last-minute search. Fate has a strange way of working, James said, surprising himself with the sentiment. Emma, the more talkative twin, looked up from her chocolate milk. "Do you believe in Santa, Mr. Harrington?" James hesitated. It had been years since anyone had asked him such an innocent question. "I believe in the spirit of giving," he answered carefully. "Mom says that's what Santa really is," Lily, the quieter twin, added. "The spirit of giving." Sarah smiled apologetically. "They're at that age where they ask a lot of questions." "I don't mind," James said, and realized he meant it. "Questions are how we learn. That's how I built my company." "What does your company do?" Emma asked. As James explained his technology business in simple terms the girls could understand, he found himself enjoying their genuine curiosity. They didn't care about stock prices or market share, they wanted to know if his computers could play their favorite games or help their teachers at school. The food arrived, and James watched as Sarah discreetly cut the girls' steaks into bite-sized pieces. There was something mesmerizing about the simple act of motherhood, something he had missed in his own daughter's life while he was building his empire. "Do you have children, Mr. Harrington?" Sarah asked, as if reading his thoughts. "A daughter," he replied. "Sophia. She's 14 now. Is she with her mother tonight?" James nodded, the familiar ache returning. "In Switzerland. They go every year." Sarah's eyes softened with understanding. The holidays can be difficult after a separation. 17 business acquisitions last year, James said with a bitter smile. "But I couldn't acquire a way to keep my own family together." "Sometimes the things we work hardest for aren't the things we need most," Sarah said gently. The twins, oblivious to the weight of the conversation, were happily devouring their meals. Their joy was contagious, and James found himself smiling more in 1 hour than he had in months. As they finished their main course, Emma asked, "What do you do on Christmas, Mr. Harrington?" The question caught him off guard. The truth, that he usually worked, or sat alone in his penthouse with expensive whiskey, seemed suddenly pathetic. "This year," he said instead, "I'm having dinner with new friends." The girls beamed at being called his friends, and something shifted in James's chest, a warmth he had almost forgotten. When dessert arrived, a spectacular array of Christmas-themed pastries, the twins' eyes widened with delight. James found himself enjoying their reaction more than the food itself. "Mom, can we give Mr. Harrington his present now?" Lily asked suddenly. Sarah looked confused. "Girls, we don't have." But Emma was already reaching into her small backpack, pulling out 2 handmade paper ornaments, stars covered in glitter and childish drawings. "We made them at school," Emma explained, handing one to James. "For people who might need extra Christmas spirit." James took the fragile paper star, turning it carefully in his hands. The last time someone had given him a handmade gift, his daughter had been younger than these girls. "This is..." he started, his voice catching unexpectedly. "This is the best gift I've received in a very long time." The sincerity in his voice seemed to touch Sarah. She watched him with new eyes as he carefully placed the ornaments in his suit pocket. As the evening progressed, James found himself sharing stories he hadn't told in years, about his humble beginnings, his early struggles, even funny mishaps from when his company was just starting. The twins laughed at his jokes, and Sarah listened with genuine interest, occasionally sharing her own stories of night shifts at the hospital and the challenges of raising 2 spirited daughters alone. When the check came, James waved it away without looking. The manager nodded, having already been instructed to charge everything to his account. "It's getting late," Sarah said, noticing the twins trying to hide their yawns. "We should head home so these two can be asleep before Santa arrives." "Of course," James said, feeling an unexpected disappointment. "Do you have far to go?" "Just a few blocks," Sarah replied. "We can catch the bus." "On Christmas Eve? In this cold?" James shook his head. "Please, let my driver take you home." Sarah hesitated, and James could see her weighing her pride against practicality. "It would be my pleasure," he added. "And it would make me feel better knowing you got home safely." "All right," she finally agreed. "Thank you." As they bundled up to leave, James made a quick call. By the time they reached the door, his sleek black car was waiting outside, his longtime driver Thomas standing ready. "Thomas, these are my friends," James said, the word feeling right on his tongue. "Please see them safely home." "Of course, sir," Thomas replied, unable to hide his surprise at seeing his employer with company, especially children. The twins marveled at the luxury car, asking if it was Santa's backup sleigh, which made both adults laugh. "Thank you for sharing your table and your Christmas Eve," Sarah said, extending her hand to James. Instead of shaking it, James found himself holding it gently. "Thank you for sharing your family, even for a little while." As Sarah turned to help the girls into the car, James made a split-second decision. "Sarah," he called. "I know this might seem forward, but would you and the girls consider joining me tomorrow? I have a rather large house that's embarrassingly empty, and I was planning to make Christmas dinner." The surprise on her face was evident. "You cook?" James smiled sheepishly. "No. But I have a chef who does, and he's already preparing enough food for an army. It would be a shame to waste it." Sarah studied him for a moment. "Why us? You don't even know us." "Because tonight was the first Christmas Eve in years that I've felt present," James admitted. "And I'd like to feel that way on Christmas Day too, if you'd allow it." After a moment's consideration, Sarah nodded. "What time should we arrive?" Relief and joy washed over James. "Is noon too early?" "Noon is perfect," Sarah replied with a warm smile. "Merry Christmas, James." "Merry Christmas, Sarah," he said, watching as she joined her daughters in the car. As the vehicle pulled away, James stood in the gently falling snow, the paper stars in his pocket and a feeling in his heart he had almost forgotten: hope. The next morning, James woke earlier than usual. For the first time in years, he felt anticipation rather than dread for the day ahead. He called his chef, making special requests for child-friendly dishes and Christmas cookies the twins could decorate. He instructed his assistant to find the finest but most age-appropriate gifts for two 6-year-old girls and their mother, to be delivered immediately. Then he did something he hadn't done in over a decade. He went into the attic of his mansion and found the Christmas decorations from his married days. With the help of his surprised household staff, he transformed the cold, minimalist space into a warm, festive home. By 11:30, everything was ready. James stood in his living room, surveying the transformation with satisfaction. The massive Christmas tree sparkled with lights and ornaments, including a special place of honor for the twins' paper stars. Gifts were arranged beneath it, and the scent of cinnamon and pine filled the air. At precisely noon, the doorbell rang. James straightened his casual sweater, another departure from his usual formal attire, and went to answer it himself, dismissing the butler with a smile. When he opened the door, the twins' eyes widened at the sight of the decorated mansion behind him. Sarah looked equally amazed, holding a small, modestly wrapped package. "Merry Christmas," James said, stepping aside to welcome them in. "Your home is beautiful," Sarah said, handing him the package. "It's not much, but we wanted to bring something." Inside was a framed photograph taken by the restaurant manager the night before, James and Sarah with the twins between them, all four smiling genuinely at the camera. James hadn't even noticed it being taken. "This is perfect," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you." The day unfolded like a dream James hadn't dared to have. They ate a magnificent lunch, decorated cookies, and opened gifts. The twins were delighted with their new dolls and books, while Sarah protested that the cashmere scarf James had chosen for her was too extravagant, until he insisted it matched her eyes perfectly. As evening approached, James received a video call from his daughter in Switzerland. To his surprise, Sophia seemed genuinely happy to see him, especially when he introduced her to Sarah and the twins. The girls chatted excitedly, bridging the age gap with their enthusiasm for Christmas, and James saw his daughter smile in a way she hadn't smiled at him in years. After the call ended, Sarah found James standing by the window, watching the snow fall. "Thank you for today," she said, joining him. "The girls will remember this Christmas forever." "I will too," James replied. "You've given me a gift I didn't know I needed." "What's that?" "A reminder of what matters," he said simply. "I've spent years accumulating wealth and power, thinking they were substitutes for connection. They're not." Sarah nodded, understanding in her eyes. Life has a way of teaching us its most important lessons when we least expect them. As they stood together in comfortable silence, James realized something profound. The emptiness he had felt wasn't just about being alone on Christmas, it was about the way he had been living his life, valuing achievement over relationship, control over vulnerability. "Sarah," he said carefully, "I know we've only just met, but would you and the girls consider coming back? Not just for holidays or special occasions, but regularly? I'd like to get to know you better, all of you." Sarah looked at him thoughtfully. "Are you asking because you're lonely, James? Because loneliness isn't a good foundation for anything lasting." Her directness was refreshing. "I was lonely yesterday," he admitted. "Today, I'm not. And I've realized I don't want to go back to the way things were. Meeting you and the girls has shown me what I've been missing, but it's more than that. I'm drawn to your strength, your kindness, the way you love your daughters. I'd like the chance to see where this might lead, if you're willing." Sarah's expression softened. "I'd like that too. But we take it slow, for the girls' sake." "Of course," James agreed. "Slow is perfect." As they rejoined the twins in the living room, where they were contentedly playing with their new toys by the fire, James felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in decades. His phone buzzed with business notifications, but for the first time, he didn't reach for it. Instead, he sat beside Sarah on the couch, watching the twins play, and realized that sometimes the greatest gifts come in the most unexpected packages, like a chance encounter on a lonely Christmas Eve, when a sad millionaire CEO dining alone met a single mother and her twin daughters. In that moment, James Harrington, the man who had everything, finally found what he had been missing all along, not in acquisitions or achievements, but in the simple joy of human connection and the promise of new beginnings. And as the snow fell softly outside, covering the world in a blanket of white, James knew that this Christmas marked not just the end of his loneliness, but the beginning of a journey that would change his life forever. If this story touched your heart, please remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Sometimes the most beautiful stories are the ones that remind us that wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the connections we make and the love we share. Thank you for watching, and may your own life be filled with unexpected blessings and new beginnings.